Hello, here's a quick explanation of the transform essay for LAR 112. Put aside what the assignment description says. Here's the nutshell assignment version. Think about the word transform and think about what that can mean, where you take something in its existing state and you want to modify it and alter it so that it may not even look like the thing that it was before. It may still resemble what it was, but it maybe looks very different by the time it's finished. You are going to imagine something about the world the way it is today that you think still needs to be improved upon or changed. And then you're going to imagine how that state or condition can be transformed so it becomes something better. You're also going to go ahead and use historical context to give an explanation for how this transformation could happen. In the abstract, that sounds a little bit confusing. The thing that occurred to me, if I were writing this paper, is I think I would want to write about transforming one way in which communities in the Midwest deal with solid waste. So, a couple of years ago, I found out from one of my university professors in the PhD program I was in that she lived in Britain for a while. And when she was living in London, it was mandatory to recycle everything that could be recycled. So plastic, metal, glass that could be recycled. They had to do that. We do that in the United States. That's not exactly a radical concept for us. But the thing that they did in London that's different is they had mandatory composting. I don't know if any of you have done composting before. I have, because my husband and I like to garden a lot. And composting is not hard to do, but it requires some space. So if I lived in an apartment building, I wouldn't really know how to begin to compost as an American. But in Great Britain, they had their waste disposal plans for their community set up that they had compost collection. And they would go ahead and gather the compost on trash day, keep it separate, and then they would make sure that humus material that was biodegradable would get taken to a place where it could all break down and it could be made into new soil. So it was good for the environment, and it was the soil that they already had so that they didn't have to rely as much on fertilizers. I think this is a fascinating idea, and it seems to me if our communities had the wherewithal to organize curbside recycling plans, it seems like our communities could come up with curbside composting plans too. Just like with recycling, it takes a little bit of work to figure out what I can compost and what I cannot compost. Basically, if I have scraps left over from making a salad, the ends of the carrots and the pieces of lettuce that have already gotten rusty, I can easily compost that, and I can compost eggshells, no problem. I can't compost meat, and I can't compost anything that's dairy. So I would have to think about it as I got started composting, but I think I could catch on pretty quickly. Can you imagine if that was all collected, and if we had a city compost site where all of that could be broken down and made into new valuable soil? It'd be fantastic, and it would be that much less waste going into landfills. So if I were writing this paper, I would say that I would like to transform waste collection and disposal so that there was compost added as an element of garbage collection. There would be the stuff that goes into the landfill that you can't figure out what else to do with it. There would be the stuff that can be recycled, the plastic, metal, and glass. And then there'd be this third category of compost. And I would probably draw upon methods that were used in Midwestern communities to get curbside recycling started. There are processes in place that people already went through to get that going, so I wouldn't have to completely invent the wheel in order to come up with a plan for how composting could be added. And then I might also look at the British system of composting. So in the American system, I would figure out how did cities make up this plan, how did they get it passed, and how did they pay for it. I might look at the British plan to ask, how do they just process all of this stuff that they collect? Do they collect it in garbage trucks? Do they collect it in a different kind of a vehicle? Where do they take it? And how do they compost it? Do they heat it so that all of this debris breaks down into soil faster? Do they have a lot of worms in it? Do they add enzymes to it? So I might look at the British model for how to process the humus material into new soil, but I might look at the American model to figure out the politics and the economics of making something like this work. That would be my transform approach. I would be looking at a very small, very specific issue today that I think could be improved upon. And then I would draw on historical examples to see if that problem got changed in a particular way in the past. Could we maybe take this current issue and transform it in the same way today? You don't have to take on as big a topic as civil rights. It does not have to be some huge global issue. You can take on a very small challenge and then just look for a way that something similar was affected in the past as an example, or just simply to inform how the problem today could be transformed and made better. Hope this clears up any questions you might have had about this assignment, this last assignment. Please look for posted information in the class and email, because I'm going to be changing the due date for when this will be done.